Hi everybody and welcome back to This Week in Magic Online Finance. I'm your host Chaz Andres, and as always, let's get started with the news. And the biggest story of the week is that there really isn't a lot going on in Standard right now. The Standard format is wide open, but the pros are all busy preparing for the Modern Pro Tour next weekend, so things are fairly quiet. The only major market trend this week is that Rivals of Ixalan spent most of the time sort of dropping off in price this week before finally hitting what I think is that equilibrium point that all sets reach once the pre-order period is far enough behind us. So let's actually take a moment and talk about Standard. Well, according to MTG Goldfish, the format has 3 top decks right now. There's Grixis Energy, there's Mardu Vehicles, there's Esper Gift. But below that is a tier full of 8, 10, 12 other viable decks. All sorts of things, red-green monsters, Mardu tokens, blue-green merfolk. You can play any of these right now. Now I'm hopeful that this Standard format will remain a brewer's paradise for quite some time to come. But being realistic, things are going to settle in the next couple of weeks. We're going to see some decks sort of rise toward that top tier, separate themselves, others are going to fall off and become less viable. And that's when the prices are really going to start to shift. You're going to start to see which cards you absolutely need to have a competitive deck and which you really don't. So what can you do? Well, if you're really sure you know what you want to play, get your deck now, because if you're right, you're going to probably save yourself some money. Otherwise, just pay attention to the Standard trends. This might be the most important season to really stay on top of what's going on in the format. Now, as for Modern, the Pro Tour is coming, and with it, it's going to bring a surge in the overall price of the index, at least for a couple of weeks. That always happens with a major event. You can also expect whatever second or third tier decks end up looking really good on camera to see some spikes. If something like Mardu Pyromancer or Titan Shift ends up looking really good that weekend, you can expect those key cards to bolt up in price at least for a little bit. Let's move on to gaining ground, where in Standard, Hazoret the Fervent took home top marks with a 2-ticket gain from 11 up to about 13, which isn't much, but actually the card was up as high as 15 earlier this week, thanks to hype likely from how good Mono Red and Mardu Vehicles looked at Star City Games Dallas last weekend. So the thing about Hazoret is it has some pretty good measurables. It's been 20 tickets in the past, it's a mythic rare, it's in multiple good Standard decks, these are all good signs. So even though Hazoret looks like it peaked earlier in the week, it's come down a bit, it's still a decent buy right now if you need a personal set. Let's move on to Modern, where Collected Company surged 4 tickets from 13 up to 17, and that price chart is still pointed right up at the sky. Now this card was as high as 25 tickets just a couple of months ago. Modern is coming back into the spotlight, it's not being reprinted anytime soon, and it's in several good decks. Depending on how this does at the Pro Tour next weekend, it could climb quite a bit, and regardless, it's still a pretty strong buy right now. Let's move on to the biggest loser, where in Standard we had a very big loser. It was Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, dropping 9 tickets from 18 down to 9, losing half its value in 1 week. And that is a lot. But there is some good news here. For one, blue-green merfolk actually does seem playable. We haven't seen a lot of this latest Standard format, but it had a pretty good day 2 conversion percentage at Star City Games Dallas. For another, the card does seem to have actually bottomed out at 9 tickets. If you take a look at the price chart, it hasn't fallen off anymore over the past couple of days. So if you are looking to build merfolk, buying in now doesn't seem bad. Let's move on to Modern, where our biggest loser this week is yet another repeat offender. It's Liliana of the Veil, dropping another 5 tickets from 57 down to 52, and this is really starting to look like a trend with this card. It's down quite a bit since this summer, but let's hang on and take a look at what this card is actually doing. It's still the 17th most played card in the entire Modern format, and it's not like they're going to be reprinting this in 2018. They just printed Liliana of the Veil in Modern Masters 2017, so unless Wizards of the Coast really wants to dump these on us, and I don't think that's going to happen, this card is going to be a 70 to 80 ticket rare at some point this year, though maybe not in the absolute immediate future. Regardless, let's wait and see how it does at the Pro Tour. Let's move on to our sneak of the week this week, which is yet another Standard card. It's Scavenger Grounds. And Scavenger Grounds was 1 ticket as recently as the Ixalan release. It's 3.5 tickets now and continuing to climb. And that's because it doesn't just show up in decks like Mono Red Aggro and Mardu Vehicles, though it does show up there, but in decks as diverse as Midrange and Control Brews, it's showing up all over the place. And a card that's that much of a staple could end up in the 5 to 7 ticket range. range. I would definitely make sure that I had my at least 2 or 3 copies of these now. So let's end the week as always by taking a look at the MTGO Trader sales data for the week. This should tell us without a doubt which cards are the most popular on Magic Online over the past 7 days, which may give us some indications on which cards might be climbing in value soon. Now in terms of overall sales, it's still Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan up at the top of that chart. Standard is still the king of the formats right now. And Unclaimed Territory still has the stranglehold on that #1 best-selling card spot. Beyond that though, there are some changes. Baffling End and Skymarcher Aspirant have replaced Legion Lieutenant and Dusk Legion Zealot on that top 5 list. So there weren't any rares or mythic rares anywhere near that top 10 by volume list, which is pretty normal. But Jadelight Ranger and Deeproot Elite were the best-selling rares of the week, which tells me that, yeah, people aren't gonna give up trying to make Merfolk work. Moving on to overall value sold, where Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca, did not hang on to that #1 spot where she was at last week. But she didn't actually fall far. She's down to just the #3 spot, which is actually pretty impressive when you remember that the card lost half its value this week. There were still a ton of those sold. Now our #1 this week was actually an old favorite. It's Chandra, Torch of Defiance, which might actually be due for a slight price bump this week because it's still a very crucial part of the format even though people aren't talking about her as much. And rounding out that top 5, the Scarab God of course, and then 2 new Rivals of Ixalan favorites, Jadelight Ranger and Rekindling Phoenix. And I'm pretty bullish on both of these cards' abilities to make an impact in the format going forward, no matter how Standard shakes out. And I think that now that Rivals of Ixalan has reached that post-release equilibrium, we're going to start to see some gains, maybe not this week, but coming soon for those cards. That's all I got for you this week. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next Monday for yet another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance.